Welcome to Beyond the Chutes is presented by Parasite Systems. BTC is on the road again. We are in Big Rapids, Michigan. And of course, I'm Doug Simcox, one of your hosts, and Mr. Sam Swearingen is here, two-time North America Rodeo Commission saddle bronc riding world champion. Good to have you with us at the table here today, Sam.
Well, it's amazing to be here. Been a long time since I've seen Mr. Cook, and I'm so looking forward to this.
Absolutely. So we are sitting here at the 5C Ranch in Big Rapids. I already said that. We're sitting in the Toad Cook Museum and the memorabilia room, the memory room, whatever you want to call it. It is an amazing room full of pictures and newspaper articles and trophies and all kinds of great memorabilia. And before I go any further, I do want to introduce your entertainer for today, your funny man, Mr. Bobby Toad Cook.
How you guys doing? I'm glad to see you. It's really a delight after all these years to be able to run into you again. Yeah, you're all looking good.
Well, thank you. You're looking good too. And without Facebook, how would we do this?
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Isn't this great? How we stay connected and everything. And of course, Bobby Toad, he is a bullfighter, was a bullfighter, barrel man, rodeo entertainer from a very, very early age. I always start this program by saying, take us all the way back. And here's a bit of trivia for our listeners. He is a 13th generation descendant of Francis Cook, one of the 41 surviving men to sign the Mayflower Compact, the foreshadowing of the U.S. Constitution. They landed on Cape Cod November 11th, 1620. Can I go back any further than that, Toad?
No, my grandfather was born in 1560 or something, but I couldn't go any farther.
Okay. And married a Belgian woman.
Oh, yeah.
Your grandmother.
Yeah. She was a Walloon, and she moved from Belgium when she was a baby.
Yeah.
Because of the Reformation.
Okay.
And they went underground with their church until they went to Holland, and from Holland they organized and bought a boat called the Stillwell, and it was petitioned the king to come to America to settle America. And of course, America tried to be settled earlier through the king's orders, and they failed, and they all died, whatever. So they organized enough people. They had 104 people, if I recall right, to load on two boats. And one was the Mayflower and the other was the Stillwell. So when the day come, they was to leave, they all took off, and my grandfather and his whole family was on the Stillwell. And they got out about 300 miles, and the boat broke down.
Oh.
So they had to turn around and go back to England, and they worked on the boat until they thought it was ready to go. Now, time is going by pretty fast. A month working on the boat, and now that sets them back from getting to the United States or the America on time. And they took off again, and this time they had to go back and abandon the boat. The boat wasn't capable of making the trip across the Atlantic.
Wow.
So my grandfather took one son, Francis, John Cook, his oldest boy, and left his wife and the rest of the family in England. And they come to America. And then 2 years later, he sent for his family.
Wow. Wow. So, and November 11th is not a great time to land on Cape Cod.
No, they had a hard time.
Yeah.
That's just what I was thinking when you said the date. I said, oh, that's a little chilly, that wind blowing across there.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they endured a lot. And they were pretty intelligent people. My grandfather was one of three people that was healthy enough to go inland and cut timber to start building little houses. But they was really scared of the Indians because they wasn't accustomed to them. So they would go back and stay in the boat, and they stayed in that boat all winter. That's cold, and
that's where they wintered. Oh my goodness!
Yeah,
oh.
They couldn't go inland because they didn't have no buildings. They had to build everything.
Wow!
So that's, if you ever get the opportunity to go to Massachusetts to the Plymouth Plantation, it's really a beautiful sight. It's reenacted. It's all traditional.
Yeah.
The language, everything is the Old English language. It's traditional. It's really something to see.
Yeah.
And you can buy a ticket to get on the Mayflower. They actually have a Mayflower. It was built by France and given to America in the 1960.
Oh.
And it's a replica of the Mayflower. And if you ever get to go on that, you will realize the trials that they had to come across in them days.
Yeah.
It was
Not very big, is it?
no, for 104 people, and half of them perished on the way.
Really? Oh, wow. Wow.
Well, so that was the Plymouth Plantation. Okay, I'll keep that in mind because I went and I seen the Mayflower. I didn't go on it. We were on some kind of tour, and it just showed us.
Yeah.
That. But I was the Plymouth Plantation.
Yeah. It had 16 sailors on it to boot. Plus, there was 44 people that survived and made it back here. So, pretty tough sledding.
Oh, my goodness. I guess. And you used the term, you described your grandmother, and you'd done a lot of genealogy study, a lot of research, a lot of years.
Yeah.
And what was the word you used to describe your grandmother?
She was a Walloon.
A Walloon.
A Walloon.
And how did you discover what in the world a Walloon was?
That was one of my really tough subjects, was to find where my grandmother come from and what she was. My grandfather was a wool comber in England, and then also when they moved to Holland for a couple, 3 years, he was a wool comber there. But my grandmother was a Belgian, and she spoke German, that's where the name Walloon came from.
I see.
That's about as much as I can give you.
And you found that in a small shop. You found the right person.
Yeah, I studied everywhere to find that word Walloon. And finally, it's in Massachusetts, and I went to a small historian's office, library, and he had it right on the tip of his tongue what it was. So that other than it, her nationality, it was no big deal.
Yeah.
So, inquiring minds, what's a Walloon?
Yeah,
right?
I don't know.
Oh, okay.
I don't
a
know. It's
descriptor,
just
I guess.
that's how he explained it to me. She was from Belgium and spoke German.
And spoke German, and therefore was a Walloon.
Was a
Okay.
Might have been a pretty woman said, Walloon, look at that.
Oh, my. Oh, my. So, not far from where we're sitting, Toad, your grandfather, Roy Luke Cooks, homesteaded.
Yes,
And that's where you were born.
that's where I was born.
So, half a mile from here? From where we're sitting today?
it's up 3 miles from
About
here.
3 miles.
Yeah,
Okay. And then your father's place was just up the road from there.
yeah, that's where I was raised at.
So Father Vaughn, Mother Tressa Bell.
Yep,
Okay. And you had 2 brothers.
Yep.
Roland and David.
yeah. They were full brothers. My dad remarried, and he had foster children, plus half children. So,
Okay. So take us back to that time. I know, first off, growing up in this area, you were farming probably with horses.
only.
Only. Okay.
Well, I can go back a little farther with my grandfather because he was my idol. I mean, I didn't know him very well. He was 6 years old when he passed, but I have so many stories of him and how he survived his life. And he was born in Ensley Center, Michigan, which is just north of Grand Rapids a little ways. And when he was 9 years old, his dad and mother and 3 siblings loaded in a covered wagon and ventured off to Kansas
Really?
to look for work.
To look for work.
Yeah.
And what was his work?
I don't know. Probably a farmer.
Was he a farmer?
Probably.
Okay.
He was also a preacher, a part-time preacher.
Okay.
But anyway, he was 9 when they left, and he had 3 siblings underneath him. So they was all pretty young. They built a sod hut in Kansas and lived in a sod hut, and of course they starved out.
Yeah.
And they was there 3 years, so now my grandfather would be 12 years old. And they decided to come back to Michigan, and they had the same team of mules that they went with. On their way back to Michigan, my great-grandmother got ill and passed away.
Oh, my.
And my grandfather, now 12 years old, took care of his dad, who laid in the back of the wagon sick, and buried his mother
At 12 years of
at
age.
12 years old.
Wow.
And he marked her grave with a big wooden post. I remember the story well. A big wooden post he drove in the ground to mark her grave, and then drove the team all day. And he said when he'd open his hands up at night, he could hardly open his from holding the lines so hard. And he took care of his dad and the three siblings. He hobbled the mules out so they could eat, fed the kids as best they could, and then get in the wagon and go again the next day. And they slowly migrated back to Ensley Center. And my granddad said that they got about 2 miles from their old homestead, and the mules recognized where they was at. They brayed and ran the rest of the way home.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Now, he did that all at 13 years old. 30 years later, he took 2 of his sibling sisters, went back to Illinois, found his mother's grave, had her exhumed, and brung back to Ensley Center
Wow.
at 12 years old.
Wow. Found her grave. Isn't that something?
That's yeah. Wow.
Yeah. So that's where I stand on is his fortitude to bring us this far, you know.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah. And so he was able to homestead up here then?
Yeah. When him and Grandma got married, they built a house up here, a stone house. Of course, that's all they had, with either trees or stones. and so they started their homestead here. And when my dad growed up, he grew up on that farm. My grandfather was a real horseman. He broke horses, sold horses, jockeyed horses. He even would buy horses from out west. Western horses, they call them now, are Mustangs, but back then they were called Western horses. He'd buy them by the trains cars and bring them to Big Rapids and unload them at the stockyards and herd them back to his farm. And him and hired men would put them in they had a stump fence corral, big corral, and they'd put them horses in there, and they was all hockey, you know, they wasn't handled before. They'd finally get one worked out, and they'd get him started a little bit, and then they had 2 big oak trees in their backyard, and they'd snub them horses up to them trees and harness them. And then they had a big rolling packer with a long tongue in it, and my grandpa would get a popple stick long enough to reach up by the side of their heads and had the leaves on it, and he'd hold it under his arm, and he'd get on that rolling packer and them turn them horses loose, and they'd go straight across this big field. And when he wanted them to turn, he'd shake that stick up there and make them shy to the left or the right. And that's how he kept them in the field. And he'd work them down until he could drive them. And then he'd put a hired man on them after that. And that's how they made a living, is jockeying and breaking horses. And I'd like to have lived at that time and seen it.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was to hear my dad talk about it. It was pretty interesting, pretty wild.
Yeah.
Yeah, can you imagine them horses finally get them under harness and then turn them loose?
Yeah.
You know, you're going to be going somewhere.
Yeah, and they had that big
High
rolling
rate.
packer. You know, they couldn't run away with it. They could run with it, but they couldn't hurt nobody. You know, I mean,
Isn't that something?
yeah, I'm sure they had wrecks, but
Yeah.
yeah. So that's what my dad. He grew up like that. My grandfather had a lot of hired men helping him, and it was a pretty good sized ranch. And my dad, he taught himself how to rope because he had to go out. We had a big area we called an open range. It was free pasture and no fences. And my dad would go out there and he'd break horses and then herd cattle with them, and he learned how to rope. And
Taught himself.
Yeah, and he became a brush popper. I don't know if you know what a brush popper is, but he tied hard and fast because he didn't know how to dally. He tied hard and fast, and he swung a loop sidearms because it's brush and trees. And if you chase a cow, you know, you got to duck under the limbs. Mm-hmm. And he taught himself how to swing a rope underhanded. And one time, I remember as a boy, he got a letter from our ranch in Texas, the King Ranch. They got a letter and they was asking him to come down there to go to work. But he didn't want to go. He didn't want to take his boys out of where we was at. So he never took the opportunity to go down to the King Ranch. But it was a nice thought.
Yeah. That's neat.
Yeah. So anyway, my dad and my grandfather was real good horsemen.
Yeah. Yeah. And so you were around it your entire life.
Well, that's all I know.
What else would you know?
Yeah, what else?
And they were farming with them. They were doing everything.
Yeah, well, we had two kinds of occupation in this country back then. One, you had maybe 12 or 14 cows that you might have milked.
Yeah.
And you worked in the woods.
Okay.
We were loggers and pulpers. And so that was our mainstay, was working in the woods. In the wintertime, of course, it gets pretty deep. But we survived. It was tough going.
Yeah. So as much timber and lumber as you were doing as you were farming?
Yeah, we did it all at the same time. Yeah.
All at the same time?
Yeah.
All with horses?
Yeah.
My goodness.
I recall the day I joined the Cavalry. We was down in 5 Mile Swamp, and the Dutch elm disease went through and killed all the Dutch elm.
Yeah.
And we had a lot of big timber down there. And my dad said, we need to get that harvested before it falls to the ground and rots.
Sure.
So we both had a team. I had a team, and he had a team. And every day we would alternate drivers on it. And we'd go down in that swamp and cut them logs. And now I was 19 years old then. And we cut them logs and skid them out to the landing and load them onto sleighs and take them out to the highway or to the road where a truck could come and pick them up. Mm-hmm. And plus there was a little sawmill, and Don Young's had a sawmill in the middle of the swamp, to penny mill, that we could skid some logs into. And he'd cut them up for lumber. But the day I joined the service, we was taking the mules and the horses up to the barn for the dinner. And I put my team away, and I hitchhiked to Muskegon and joined the Cavalry.
Cavalry, first Cavalry.
Yeah.
And so you volunteered.
Oh, yeah.
For the service.
Oh, yeah.
And what?
I was 19 years old, and I knew there was something out in this world that I hadn't seen yet, and I wanted to experience. And so the best transportation I could find right at that time was a free ride with the Army.
Yeah. and at Cavalry, so on horseback, was that?
I trained for a year. I was trained as a scout, and I went through a lot of training. And one of my tours was I was in mountain training in Colorado, Camp Carson, Colorado, and they had one cavalry unit mounted there, one troop. And when I would be out of one of my classes, I was in these schools, I call them classes, but they were schools of hard knock. I could go in that troop and do a mounted drill with them. And they was used just for parades and funerals and whatever, but I wasn't permanently attached.
Okay.
I was just in and out when I had time to do it.
Yeah.
But I did experience it.
So what does an NCO Red Fox Scout do?
Oh, just what it sounds like. You're out in front and you go take a look.
You go take a look.
You go take a look.
Okay. So what kind of skills were you taught for that?
Survival.
Yeah.
Survival. One of my trainings was prisoner of war training. It was pretty rough. And after the training was all over with, and the drill instructors would ask you, well, what did you learn out of this deal? And I said, don't get caught.
Don't get caught. Yeah. So prisoner of war training, you were confined. As if, right?
Oh yeah, it was a reenactment.
Yeah.
Okay, you knew that wasn't going to kill you.
Yeah,
but
didn't treat you real nice.
No, the treatment was pretty tough.
Yeah,
but it had to be to understand.
Yeah.
It was all for a purpose.
What are those skills that you learned in that training, whether it was Colorado or overseas, section later with 2nd Cavalry? What skills did you bring forward with you that you've applied in the rest of your life?
I got this from early stages of my scout training. The first couple of months was pretty physical. A lot of training. You have to be, you're on foot and And so there's a lot of physical work to it. And I was in a class, a communications class, where we was tearing radios apart and fixing them, because that's our mainstay, was a radio. And the drill instructor asked me a question, and I couldn't answer it. So he said, "Where's your notes?" And I said, "I don't have any." Well, my drill instructor picked up on that right away, and when we went outside for a smoke break, he got right in my face, and his nose touched mine, and he whispered to me, he said, "Cook, you're going to be the first one dead anyway." He said, "I ought to kill you right now." And, kind of scared the bejeepers out of me.
Yeah.
I was shaking in my boots. I mean, this guy's got more stuff on his sleeves, and so that was just the beginning. He punished me then every night. Everybody else could go back and get your boots shined and get ready for the next day's service. I had to check out a rifle, a full pack, and he would take me out and run me all night long, or not all night, but for hours. We would run up and down Misery and Agnew Hill there in Fort Knox. And the first thing he'd do is get me loaded with everything, and then he'd run me down the hill and blister my feet and make me lame. And he would run me every night, and it went on for a month like that. And he would run along beside me. I wasn't running. I was just putting one foot in front of the other, to be honest with you. I was wore out. Mm-hmm. And he'd say, "Quit, Cook. We don't want you in the Scouts. Quit. Get out." And I said, "No, sir." And I kept my determination. I wanted that name. I wanted that title. I wanted that. And I didn't quit. I wouldn't quit. And when I got ready to ship out to go to mountain training, he come up to me and he said, "Cook, you could be in my Scout section anytime." He said, "I couldn't beat you." So
wow,
that convinced me that I could do anything I wanted to do.
Yeah.
It just set my heart to be successful.
Man, hard work and misery in the middle of it all.
Oh, yeah, it was suffer.
Yeah, yeah.
But they still got to go through that stuff, It's pretty tough.
Yeah.
But it's all for a purpose.
Determination.
Determination.
That's all it was your mind over matter,
Yes, exactly.
You person should have gave up a long time ago, but your mind said, "I want this so bad, I'll do it."
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I watched you guys and them events do the same thing. You get up, you might have a pulled shoulder or something, but you get up and you're determined to go get it again. You go back. That's what we all do. We go back and get in it.
Wow.
And you give up a lot to get there.
Yeah, you give up a lot.
Mm-hmm. So after the service, you come back to the States. A little bit of adjustment coming back into Michigan and back to the homestead?
A bunch.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Talk about that, if you would, please.
Pretty hard. I wasted a year after I got home because Vietnam had started. And I was stationed on the Russian front. I was monitoring the Russians at that time. And I got home. They told me, "Don't get rid of your uniform. We're going to call you back." And so I had a year of inactive duty. And so I wasted a year. I lived every day for myself.
Okay.
I drank, got in fights. I hated the world, was mad at the world I come home and they told me to take my monkey suit off that I'd worked for so hard. Yeah. So my wife, I met her, and what a blessing.
About that time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. We started dating, and it's kind of odd how I met her. My stepmother, she see that I was on the wild side of life, and she said, "There's a real pretty girl down on the homestead." But her dad had bought my grandfather's homestead when I was overseas and moved in, and I didn't know her. So my grandmother said my stepmother said there was a real pretty girl down there, and so I got on my motorcycle and I drove down there and knocked on the door. She hates me to tell this story, but she come to the door and she said, "Yes," and I said, "You want to go for a ride on my motorcycle?" I mean, it happened that fast.
That fast. Didn't know who you were.
Didn't know me.
You did introduce yourself, I hope.
Not very much.
Not very.
No, like I told you, I was wild. I didn't have many cares.
Yeah.
And so that year I lived day to day. And once I had my sweetheart and she was sticking with me, we had a future.
Okay.
And so a year later we got married.
I was going to say, so a year after you rode down, knocked on the door, you got married.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Been a blessing ever since. Been almost 56 or 7 years.
My goodness.
Yeah.
My goodness.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Yeah. Thank you.
bet.
Yeah.
You bet.
She needs a medal for it.
Oh, my.
Oh yeah.
Oh, wow.
Don't they all?
I couldn't have did it without her.
Yeah.
No kidding. I couldn't have did it without her.
You know, and we talk about that in on our podcast. We talk about how important you're out front and center, you're in the barrel, whatever, but how important the support system is.
Oh, wow.
Help you go down the road, help you stay sane,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Going down the road is another life.
Yeah.
It's a whole different life than coming home and being at home.
Yeah.
You're raising your children in front of your bosses. You know, you pull into a rodeo grounds and you're all huddled up there in the infield somewhere, and you gotta correct your children, raise your children in front of everybody.
Yeah.
And it's pretty tough.
Yeah. And you got 3 kids.
Yeah.
Tim, Lori, and Brad. I met Brad earlier today.
Yeah.
He was here with us. How far apart in age were they?
Oh, probably 5 years.
5 years.
Yeah.
Okay.
Close.
And how young were they when you put them on the road?
Oh, Brad was just a baby.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, see, after Mary and I got married, I got a job in the city of Big Rapids. We had to move to a little trailer park south of Big Rapids to be in the telephone district because I worked for the city and I had to be in their telephone district. And so we rented a little trailer there and we lived there for a while. And my dad had a garbage company he had bought from his father-in-law. And he was hauling garbage in the trucks, and he gave me a couple of counts. And I'm working at the city. I worked at night, and so I didn't have a big duty roster to do. I just had to check water levels and whatever, and pretty simple job. And so daytime I had a lot of free time.
Yeah.
And so I took them customers and I started building a garbage company out of that. And after a while, I bought my father's garbage company. And Mary and I worked that, and we were broke most of the time because we was trying to bring in containers, garbage containers, and so I would call the banker out to White Cloud and say, Rich, can you put $10,000 in my checking account? I want to go buy a load of containers. And yeah, come sign the contract or your note when you get into town. It was pretty laid back. And then when I get them paid for, I'd go borrow some more. And I kept building that business until I was in 3 counties.
Oh, wow.
And I didn't pick the whole counties up, but I was in 3 counties. And I was working around the clock. I doing some welding on the side. I had all of them trucks and drivers working. I had a landfill. And I didn't have any time. It was just work. And one evening, a salesman come to the door, and he introduced himself as a realtor and wanted to know if I wanted to sell my garbage company. And without a thought, I said yes. And when I sold it, when I signed the contract with him, I didn't know what was going to happen, of course. And then a couple of days later, Waste Management was at my door.
Okay.
And we started negotiating, and after a while, they took over my business, and I had hardly any weight on my shoulders, no responsibility at all. And I said, look out, rodeo, here I come.
Okay. So, sell out of the garbage business, and You had dabbled in rodeo? You had been in rodeo your whole life.
Oh, yeah, I followed my dad. Yeah, my dad rodeoed, and our whole family was involved in it. But I wasn't a clown. I was just, I would just watch. I was just a young boy.
Yeah.
And yeah, so rodeo wasn't new to me.
Okay.
And three of my friends that I buddied with were putting on a small jackpot and asked if I wanted to be the clown. And I said, sure. I didn't know what I was getting into. I mean, I watched the clowns at the rodeos, and I was admired by them. I mean, by that time, them guys was funny, you know.
Yeah,
It was better than going to a show. So I come home, and that's where my wife, she stepped right up and built me a pair of baggy breeches, and I put a pair of bib overalls on a pony and hooked a little kid's red wagon behind it, and there was my act.
That was your first act.
That was it. And I rode around in the arena and don't even know what I did, but I rode around the arena, and the pony looked cute. So yeah, that was the start of it. And how I got my name was those three guys said, they all know who you are. You're a garbage man here in the community and the welder, so we can't call you Bob Cook from Big Rapids. We're going to get you a different name. And so they called me Toad and said I was from Texas.
Toad from Texas.
And it stuck.
Yeah.
Good thing you had the face paint on, huh?
Yeah.
They'd have still known you were Bobby
Yeah,
Cook, huh?
that's right. A good disguise.
And I'm looking at the pictures here around the room, and one picture we actually spoke of your father on a steer during a Wild West show.
Yeah.
And I'll try to get a picture of this before we leave. It's the fence is snow fence, the wooden picket fence that you'd unroll,
Yeah.
right, to keep the drifts down off the road.
Yeah.
So he was in it all the way through. I mean, you've always been in rodeo.
Always.
Always.
Always. That picture is actually a postcard.
Oh, it is.
Yeah. And I don't know how I come about it, but I've had it for years. But yeah, that's how they did it. They put a picket fence up. Everybody drove their car right up against it, and you sat on the hood of your car and watched the rodeo.
Sure.
And I recall one time a bull jumped out, and he was going down through them cars, and he's coming towards me, so I crawled under the car.
Yeah. Weren't fighting bulls at that point.
No. I was pretty little. Yeah.
So you did this for your friends, this little jackpot. What was the next gig? When did you say, this is me?
Well, there was a rodeo producer in Reed City, Garth Urbis, and he had an amateur string, and for somehow, I don't know how I did, but I got hooked up with him, and I did a little short travels with him. I remember he broke my ribs in Chinook Air Force Base in Illinois. I went down there for him, and I got bumped down there by a bull and come home with broken ribs. But I started back.
So you were fighting bulls, not just being a funny man at this point.
Yeah, I wasn't really clever at it.
No.
Okay, I was new.
Okay.
I could climb a fence pretty fast.
Yeah.
And so once I got a taste of it, I thought, well, I'm going to go to bullfight school. And I went to a rodeo, and I was watching a clown by the name of Larry Clayman. And I heard him talking about teaching bullfighting, and I thought, wow. So I got hooked up with him, and him and Wick Peth, the world champion bullfighter, his name is notorious in the rodeo. He was putting a school on in New Mexico. So I sent my fees in to go to that school, and I loaded my kids in a camper, and Brad was just a baby, and we went to New Mexico, and that was my first bullfight school. I went down there. I wasn't very brave, but I got a taste of it, and I kept going back every year to Wick Pest schools to get tuned up, and finally I thought, well, I can step out into this. And when I got totally retired from the garbage company, I connected with Jim Zinser, who owns the J Bar J Ranch, and a very, very good contractor, and he took me under his wing. And I did a few intercollegiate rodeos for him, and I got hooked up with him, and we traveled for quite a few years like that. So that way I could get outside the state, 2 or 3 mile states. So.
And how far afield were you traveling? You were still working, right? You still had day jobs.
Oh yeah, still had the welding company and rodeoing. So I guess Jim, he went 3 or 4 states away, and I could go to them and still get home in time for Monday morning work.
Yeah.
But when I was working with him when I had the garbage company yet too. But when that sold and I got freed up from that business, after a while I told Jim, I think I need to try my wings a little farther, go a little farther, and that's when I joined the RCA.
You did? Mm-hmm. What year did you join the RCA?
Oh, in the 70s, I think.
Okay. And at that point, it's either the RCA or the IPRA, right?
Yeah, I was in the IPRA. It was, at that time, it was called IRA, International Rodeo Association.
Yeah.
And I think we worked together there, did we not?
Well, I didn't put on rodeos till later on, but yeah, I was.
You was participating.
Yeah, I was participating, and I kind of remember when I asked Jim, when you left, I said, "Where'd Toad go?" You know, and I don't know. I must have seen you somewhere because I was pretty young. If it had been the mid '70s, so I must have just seen you as a clown or something. But that was before I didn't really start riding until the late '70s, early '80s.
Oh yeah. Well, I was probably still there, in '79 or so yet.
Okay, and then so that would have been it. I was still riding, and then you had left and moved on, and I thought, and we kind of got in a conversation of how he found you or how you found each other, and how I thought, wow, pretty lucky to find a clown like that in his backyard.
Basically an hour from him, right?
Pardon me?
Claire's only about an hour from here.
Oh, it's an hour.
Claire, Michigan.
Yeah. I have a picture of my wife up here. That's my favorite picture, and it's a story about meeting Jim. And this is when, in my amateur years, and I was working for Mr. Urbis, and I heard about a IRA contractor in Clare, Michigan, and I wanted to meet him in the worst way. And so on my tours of work, if I went through Clare, I'd always look for a name on a mailbox or something for the J Bar J Ranch, and I never could find it. But he was contracted with Loretta Lynn's outfit, bringing some bulls down to somewhere down by Detroit. And I told Mary, I said, I want to go down there and maybe connect with Jim at that show, because he'll be there, and so maybe I get to meet him. So we loaded it in a pickup camper, myself and Jim Larabelle and his wife, and Mary and her were pretty good friends, and I had all my makeup stuff in that back of that camper. And announced to me, the girls took a bottle of wine with them. And so we're driving down there, and of course I got my hopes up to meet Jim, and I didn't know it, but the girls was sipping on that wine, and they got into my grease paint. And when I told them, when we get there now, we got to be on our best behavior, because I want to make an impression for this Jim. And so I got there, pulled in the infield and where everybody was parked, and I thought, well, I'm already amongst the cowboys now. This is good. And I got back there and opened that door up, and my wife steps out. Hello! Tipsy. And I thought, I got to fall through the floor here. Here, I brought my loaded wife in with wine. So the pictures are, she's got makeup all over her. But it worked out.
It worked out. You got to meet him at that rodeo.
Well, we connected after a while, and I don't remember just exactly how it went, but he was pretty hardcore. He was a pretty tough boy too to work for. Oh. He had some rank bulls. He was noted for his bulls for a long time, and of course now he's notorious for his horses. He's had a horse just put in the Cowboy Hall of Fame. Yep. So
my boys, I introduced them to Jim yesterday.
Oh, good.
And I said, now, you guys aren't going to believe this, because all you hear about is his horses, but he was the bull man in the day.
Oh, he was.
He had bulls that were unbelievable at that time. And always had great bulls all the way through. But
Oh, yeah.
but when he started, he was the bull
notorious.
man. Yeah.
Oh, I'd never forget them both.
Yeah.
That was pretty tough on me, you know. Jim liked hooking.
Yeah.
He did.
He liked to sell tickets.
That's what I said. I said I was like the unwanted stepchild because that's kind of where I got most of, I rodeoed around the house a little bit when I ventured out.
Yeah.
Michigan, Zinsers were the closest big rodeos.
Yeah.
And I said, I don't think he liked me. He tried to kill me. And I think Mag was on the same page. Let's get rid of this Yankee. And kind of like you, I survived.
Yeah. Yeah, we all did.
We survived.
Yeah. I came within inches of telling him I quit. Inches.
Really?
I mean, this is totally against my standard, but he broke all my ribs one time. That bull got me down, and he wallered me pretty good. And I was a sick boy. Yeah. And it was the last performance, and so I went back to my trailer, and Mary, for a long time, had to hold my arms while I would sit down on the bed and then try to pick my feet up and lay me on the bed because I was really busted bad. And I went back to the trailer that night, and I said to Mary, I think I'm going to tell Jim I'm quitting. I said it right out of my own mouth. I said, I think I might tell Jim I'm quitting.
Yeah.
And I said, I'll sleep it off tonight if I can. And the next morning I woke up and I said, I ain't quitting. I still was sore, still hurting, but that was just a whim to quit. And I forgot what it was to suffer. So
And there you go, back to being run all night long to not quitting.
Yeah.
And
And that's
did it again.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that's something.
You don't get nowhere quitting.
No.
Yeah.
So 2 times you fought at the IFR.
Yeah.
Early on.
Yeah.
First year, I believe you were there with Skipper Boss, Lisa Harris.
I don't remember anymore who all was in there. I remember Buddy Martin, Doug Abbiati for sure. Mm-hmm. I don't remember just exactly who all the clowns was at that time, but I worked with them through the life. Yeah, Skipper. Yeah, I worked a lot with Skipper.
Yeah.
He was an IRA cowboy for a long time. Yeah.
And during one of these finals, you crawl up to see, I believe you were working a re-ride. You told me.
Oh yeah. Well, this is where Calgary comes in.
Yeah.
Okay, a Michigan boy in the rodeo. Okay, you know about Calgary, but you know that's a far away place.
Yeah.
Hard to get to, especially in this business. Well, we had one more read ride to do after the performance, and the audience was leaving, and so I jumped over the fence and sat by my wife and Margaret Zinser, and I was getting told what I did wrong or what I didn't do right, and a gentleman pulled up behind me and sat down and tapped me on the shoulder, and I turned around to look at him, and he said, "I'm Winston Bruce. You got time to talk to me?" And I said, "Yeah, but I got a re-ride. I got to go take care of this re-ride, and I'll be back." And so I went and worked the bull and come back, and he was sitting there, and he handed me this business card, and he said, "Would you like to go to work for me?" And I said, "Who are you and what do you do?" And he said, "Well, I'm the manager of Calgary Stampede." I said, "What?" I mean, the good Lord put people in front of me that I had no idea that I would ever get to Calgary. Didn't know I was going to be able to go to the IFRs. I mean, just got lucky for that. But I wasn't lucky. God was steering all of this all the time. I need to give that credit to God because I didn't know who Winston Bruce was, and I didn't know how to get to Calgary.
Yeah.
So anyway, to come out of it, I did get a contract with him, and it was a lot of fun to go up there. And I would go up there after I got connected. I would go up there 3 times a year. I'd work Rodeo Royal in the spring for him. That was a building rodeo. And then I would do the summer rodeo, the Stampede. then I do the fall roundup rodeo. It's in another building.
Oh, wow.
And I go up there 3 times a year. Plus, I do a lot of Canadian rodeos too. I had a run up there with Harry Vold's son, and he had a contractor. He was a contractor, so I did a lot of rodeos up there.
Yeah.
Would that have been Doug Vold
Doug, yeah.
or Wayne?
No, Wayne.
Wayne. Okay.
Doug was the horseman. Wayne was the contractor. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I got it right now.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So talk a little bit about King of the Rodeo, Harry Vold.
Oh my. What a gentleman. What a pure gentleman. He is the ultimate man of rodeo. Everybody loved him. He was very intelligent with rodeo. He kind of took me under his wing. That's another God thing. God directed me into him. And I'll never forget, I was somewhere far away working, and I called home to Mary to see how everything was at home, and she said, "You got to call Harry Vold." And I thought, "Who's Harry Vold?" Well, she gave me the number, and so I called him, and he answered the phone, and I said, "Harry Vold, this is Toad Cook." "Toad Cook," he said. You got to understand how he talks. He said, "I want you to come to the Canadian National Finals." And I said, "Harry, I'm an IRA cowboy." He said, "I don't care what you are." He was right point blank.
Yeah.
I couldn't go to Canadian National Finals. I didn't have a pro card. I had an
yeah.
IRA card.
Yeah.
So anyway, I had the invite. In fact, I had that a couple of times, but it got blocked because I didn't have a card.
Yeah. Yeah.
And here we go back to the same scenario. What could have really happened if they'd have opened this up to the world?
Yeah.
Like it should have been.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
who knows, you know.
Right.
But, you know, you keep saying God's got a plan.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah. You just got to stick to his works.
And so hard to do.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. You got your own ambitions too.
You got your own plans.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah. So Harry, I got hooked up with him on some runs. You know, when you take a run with a guy, you see some territory.
Yeah.
And Harry was like Jim Zinser. He had some bad bulls, tough bulls, and he was tough everywhere. But Jim Zinser and Harry Vold had the worst bulls of anybody I ever actually worked for. And I seen some tough bulls in Mexico. But anyway, you get in a run with Harry, and you could just about. That's how I got hooked up to the Wrangler Bull Fight match, was through him. Mm-hmm. And you go through one of them matches every week, you earned your money.
So you were there at the beginning of the Wrangler Bullfighting Tour.
Pretty close. It was probably I was probably a year late or something, but
okay.
It was I was in the early stages of it. There was probably 11 traditional bullfighters that was to go into that, you know, that competed.
Okay.
And that's when Wrangler sponsored the money. I'll never forget. I think the first go around was they offered like $1 million for who was going to take that buckle home that year. And boy, these guys was fighting for blood. I mean, and they was turning out them wolves on us.
Yeah.
And these guys was going to them. And yeah, I got to they got to fight one bull apiece every match. I got to fight them all.
Yeah.
Because you were barrel man.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I had to face them all.
Yeah.
But
You weren't in the running for the $1 million. You
No.
just had to be in the barrel.
I got paid extra for that.
Did you? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Wrangler feathered my bed pretty good just to take care of the doctor bills.
Yeah. And who were some of the bullfighters? You said 11. Who were some of the bullfighters?
Oh my goodness. Miles Hare, Rob Smits, Skipper Voss, Rage. It just goes on and on.
Yeah.
Every one of
Sparks.
them, I worked with them. Yeah.
Donnie and Ronnie Sparks?
Yeah. They come after.
They did.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But they were cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Rex Dunn, Mr. Smooth. Yeah. I went to Rex was starting to raise fighting bulls at that time because he was a real challenge bullfighter. He was a good bullfighter. They called him Mr. Smooth, and he was putting on a bullfight event. It was open, so pros could go or anybody could go. And I heard about it, so I said, I'm going to go down there. They didn't know who I was up against. The first thing he did is got me hooked and throw it up in the air and come down on my head, and I was out of the game. But I got to work for him one time, and he was just putting an expedition on a bullfight. So, yeah, Rex was pretty smooth. Too bad he's gone now. He's in heaven, I hope.
Yeah.
A lot of the old boys are gone.
Yeah. Yeah.
A lot of them died young.
Yeah. Talk a little bit about your friend, Buddy Martin.
Oh, Buddy Martin. If you look up that picture up there, that big picture frame, you'll see a letter that's written. Can you see that?
Yep.
See that penmanship? Is this where it says Merry Christmas?
Yep.
Buddy wrote that to me. He wrote that handwriting he wrote with his teeth.
Oh, jeez.
That Merry Christmas he wrote with his teeth. I'm up in Canada working. I'm on my way to Canada working, and I was going to Edmonton. And I was going through northern Canada, and my motorhome was froze up, my water was froze up, and I was by myself, and the snow was deep. And anytime you come to a gas station on them northern roads, you stop and gas up because you don't know where the next one's at. And I just happened to stop in this little country gas station, and they had a telephone booth there. So I thought I was lonely, and I thought I'd call my wife, see if everybody's okay. So I'm getting ahead of my story a little bit. Let me back up. Before that, I was at a rodeo, and Roger Martin and I was working, and Buddy was on a horseback and doing pickup. And I went in on a hang-up, and the bull got me in the belly, hooked me in the belly, and ripped the clothes off me, and I could hear Buddy getting the bull off me. And because Buddy had a way of how he talked to them bulls, and I was trying to get up and put my clothes back on. I told him to take me out of the arena, but I was hurt pretty bad. And so Jim, he put me behind the chutes, and I sat down there, and after a while, Jim called the ambulance, and he said, come and get him out of here. And so they took me off to Ann Arbor. But the next week, Buddy took my place. He was working the rodeo for Jim. And the very same bull broke Buddy's neck. So Buddy walked around with a halo for a year. And so I didn't get to see him too much because he didn't come to the rodeos as much. And by this time, I had joined the RCA, the PRCA, I should say. That's more proper. In my second year, I made the national finals, and that made me eligible to endorse another clown. Well, I was now back in my motorhome going to Edmonton, and my motorhome was froze up, and I run into this gas station, and I called my wife, and she said, you got to call Buddy Martin right away. And I said, well, I haven't heard from Buddy in a long time. So I got on the phone, and he was living in Alabama at the time, and he had a southern accent, and he said, Toad, he said, will you sign my card? Now, Buddy's been to the national finals, probably the IFR, probably 9 times.
Oh, wow.
A lot.
Yeah.
He's been there a lot. So he was qualified, more than qualified.
Yeah.
And I said, why do I need to sign your card, man? You should sign mine.
Yeah.
But anyway, I signed his card, and he got hooked up with Harper Morgan, and Buddy broke his neck again. First bull.
With Harper Morgan.
I'm sure it was Harper Morgan.
On
bull.
his PRCA card.
Yeah,
first bull.
PRCA. Yeah, he got his PRCA card, and he was on his honeymoon, believe it or not. So he was paralyzed from there on, and so That's where that letter come from, that Christmas card. He wrote that with his teeth. Wish me Merry Christmas. Soon after that, he passed away.
You know, and there's so much to take out of the story you just said. You know, Buddy, I knew him not real well, but he was a true gentleman.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
you know, God-fearing,
Oh, yeah. Very much so.
great man. And how close the PRCA keeps it to the vest, to their people,
Yeah.
and not opening it up to the world, you know.
Yeah.
Here, he's got to get you to sign a card for him. And it's still that way now.
Yeah.
You know, and I get it. You want the best people you can get.
Yeah. I run into that quite often because I'm asked to help,
Yeah.
to endorse somebody.
Okay.
And when I did Buddies, I started getting cold feet to do it, you know, because I took a little of that responsibility onto myself. And I didn't need to, because Buddy was totally qualified. He was a grown man. He knew what he was doing. Mm-hmm. It just was an accident, and it's just another God thing. He was done. God was finished with him. He proved what he could do. Mm-hmm. But there's a young man out there right now that's got a lot of quality to him. And he's asking me to sign his card for him, and I'll have to go see him work a couple of more times. Not that I want to be hard on him, but I want him to know that that's what he wants first. Mm-hmm. Because that's quite a thing to step in front of them guys day after day after day after day. You know.
Yeah, and it's a process. Like, to sign the card, I was doing a rodeo, and I had an announcer hired, and they called me and asked me if I'd evaluate the announcer. And I said, well, I know he's good. I hired him. Now he's 2-time announcer of the year in the PRCA.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
it's just...
They're there.
Yeah.
All you got to do is give them a chance.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't like the job that I got to endorse somebody. Mm-hmm. I got a good friend. I love this guy. He rodeos, and he's got his own little outfit. And he asked me to help him. And I was in that Wrangler tour at the time, and I mean, that was a rough game. I mean, you do that every week. Every week you got that big team of both to hit you. And I thought, man, if I help you, there's only people I'm up against is who I'm working for. You know, who can I bring you to? Who can I direct you to? So I kind of reserved myself from helping my friend. And I still think about how come I didn't help him. But shortly after that, he had his family to a rodeo, and his boy entered a bull ride and got killed.
Oh, jeez.
And oh, what a heartbreak for us all. It was a beautiful young boy, and he was just trying to get his dream together.
Right.
And I just was sorry that I didn't help my friend, but I'm glad that I didn't want to be another part of helping somebody make a decision.
Yeah.
You know, when I went through all that training as a scout, I told you about, I wanted that. That was what I wanted. Mm-hmm. And I could go through the pain to get it. But these young guys don't experience that pain yet. They haven't been in them marinas and gone through that, having them bulls blow that snot on you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And throw you over the moon.
Yeah. So you're talking the Wrangler Bull Fights, and tell us about Harry Gold's crooked nose.
Everybody knows Crooked Nose. That's a picture of him up there. Harry sent me that signed poster. But
he's on the Wrangler Jeans bullfighting poster. That's
Yeah.
Crooked Nose.
That's Crooked Nose.
Wow.
He's what he looks like.
Yeah.
He's a beast.
Yeah.
He would tip his head and look at you like on an angle. Now I can be as far as you are from me, the width of this table, away from him, waiting for him to blow to hit me. And all I got to do is just drop down and tuck. And he would never warn you. He'd never give you the clue when he's coming. He'd just swat you.
Really?
You'd be hit just that fast. He was unreadable.
Yeah.
not many guys could get around him.
Yeah.
No.
You didn't want to draw him.
No, well,
If you were a bullfighter.
well, I seen guys argue for him. I seen Eric
Okay.
Veers and Kamikaze Kid, all of them guys. They loved him because they can point on him.
Okay. Okay.
If they can get around him,
They get around it.
they got to get around him.
Smart bull.
Oh, very, very smart.
Yeah.
Very smart.
Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, he took me out.
Yeah.
He got in the barrel with me.
And when you mean got in the barrel with you, so you tuck down, you're inside the clown barrel.
See how long his horn is?
Yeah.
It went clear to the bottom of the barrel
With you in it.
with me in it.
Oh my.
Yeah.
And what happened?
It was kind of like a mix master.
Yeah. Yeah. So broken bones.
Oh, yeah, I come home sore footing.
Did you? Mm-hmm. And that took a while to recover from.
Oh, yeah. In fact, I come home and I had to go back to work. I was hobbling around and I lost a little interest, and so I couldn't go because it took me a while to recuperate. And by that time, I started getting in the refrigerator too much, and I hadn't been to Calgary for 3 years, I guess, or 4. I don't know, it was one winter. Winston Bruce at Calgary called me up 3 times in the winter, said, Toad, I want you to crack back out and come back to work. And I said, Winston, I can't. I said, I'm butcher fat now, and I lost my heart. I don't think I got it anymore. He said, I don't believe that. And so he kept after me, and he sent me a contract, and doggone it, I sat here on the desk for a long time before I signed it. And one day I got the butterflies or something, and I put my name on it and put it in the mailbox. Now I got a contract, and I got about 3 or 4 months to get ready.
Yeah.
Now I'm starting to getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning. I'm running 5 miles. I'm trying to get this grease off me and try to get ready. And by this time, I had sold all my acts. I didn't have much for funny anymore. Anyway, Mary and I and Brad, he was still at home yet, and we jumped in the old car and we took off for Calgary. And I will tell you, I was scared every mile.
Really?
I was a wreck driving up to Calgary. I said, yeah, I don't know what I'm going to do. I know I can't face them anymore. As soon as I pulled into Calgary, I went to the rodeo office, and they come out and told me that to go in to see Winston. I went in there, and he said, you got a national interview to do. Go get ready for it. And so I went over and got ready, and the television people came over, and they was interviewing me, and they asked me if I was coming back. I said, well, I'm going to try to do it here and whatever. I don't remember the conversation. They made a nice tape out of it. But Kelly LaCosta walked by, and he was who I was going to work with. And I said, Kelly, I'm going to safety up. He said, that's okay. He said, I'll take care of you. I was scared to death. I was scared to death to walk out in that arena. And the first bull came out, and he missed me by a mile. I mean, he wasn't even paying attention to me. I said, that wasn't bad. And then the next one come out, and I said, that wasn't better yet. It was closer yet. The third one come out, I said, bring him on. Really? Come back. I knew I had lost it. I just drove all the way there, scared. And my third bull, I said, bring him on. Okay. And then I liked it again.
Right back into it.
Right back into it. But, yeah, what an experience.
Well, what a deal. You know, here's Calgary. You know, they're sending them contracts, you know, for the guy in Michigan. Here's your contract. I think you can do it. You know, keep coming. And this is it's got a, you know, it's such a blessing and an honor.
Yeah, well,
you know.
I got pretty puffy at one time in my life.
Pretty puffy. What does puffy mean?
Pretty proud. Pretty puffy of myself. I puffed myself up pretty good. I was still in the IRA.
Okay.
And I had the garbage company yet, and I would run in a route, and then at night I would bury the landfill. I'd cover the landfills, and then at night I would work on the trucks. And so I had a 24-hour job running that company, and I didn't have much time. And I had a truck in the old garage and working on it, and the telephone rang, and this guy got on the phone and said, "Are you Toad Cook?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "Well, you're a hard man to find." I said, "Well, what do you need?" And he said, "Well, my name is Don Hartwick, and I'm a sound agent for a lot of the major stars." And right off the get-go, he told me that he did about 85% of Elvis Presley stuff. And boy, I said, I got a friend out there's got a prank on him. He's pranking me pretty hard. and I'm trying to blow this guy off, and he's trying to tell me who he is. And I just know it's one of my friends harassing me.
Yeah.
And finally, the guy gives up, and he said, "I'm going to call you back in 15 minutes. And he said, "I want you to answer the phone." So I went back to work on the old truck, and phone rang in 15 minutes. And he said, "My name is Don Hartwick, and I am who I say I am. And I want you to come to Mexico to fight bulls for Antonio Aguilar, the Roy Rogers of Latin America." I said, "Are you sure you got the right guy?" Well, again, I signed the contract. I didn't know what I was doing. I got somebody to run the company, and Mary and I took off with our kids, and they were young. And we got in this motorhome, and we started for Brownsville, Texas. And we went through the tour of all the bull rings in Mexico. We toured a lot of the bull rings, or actually all of them. But one of the favorite one was the Federal Penitentiary of Mexico. That was a big prison. They had a big infield inside of it with 2 remote walls on the outside of it. And we was contracted to go in there to put on a rodeo for the prisoners. And they were bringing their own Mexican charros in, and the prisoners wasn't being part of it where they are in the States. The prisoner rodeos here, but there they brung the charros in, the regular professionals. And I got to work that prison when we wouldn't dare let our kids too far away from us. We had to watch them pretty close. In fact, one of my dogs got kidnapped and held for ransom. And
What?
Yeah. My good that
Avatar.
Avatar.
Avatar the Great.
Got captured or took and kidnapped him.
Really?
Yeah, and held him for ransom. And anyway, I paid the ransom.
How much was it? Was it in pesos?
Yeah, it was probably about $100. But
That's a lot back in those days.
oh yeah. Well, I don't know where I was going in that story, but
The prison.
yeah, prison. Well, we would been staying in them bull rings, and pretty dangerous, you know. I mean, we had a charcoal grill. Just for an example, we had a charcoal grill. We'd set it up there, and we'd cook them hot dogs or whatever, steaks or whatever we could. And the little kids would come up there and play, and they'd grab them briquettes and take off running with them, right? Them little glowing things. And they'd drop them after a while because they couldn't. But I mean, it was pretty wide open.
Wow.
So,
Yeah. So we went through that whole tour, and when we come home, Mary said, "I'm never going back to Mexico again."
How long were you down there?
3 months.
3 months. Mm-hmm. Wow.
So a year went by. Telephone rings again. It's Don Hartwick again, and he said, "Toad, you coming back to Mexico?" And I said, No, my wife won't go. He said, "Why don't you come anyway?" I said, and I told you I was puffed up. I was in my IRA days. I've been in the national finals for once or twice, and I felt pretty good about myself. I was pretty proud of myself. I was forgetting my leader. Okay, I left God out of the picture for a while. And so the second year I went down, I was going to go by myself. I signed the contract. Mary said she's not going, so she's going to stay here with the kids. I was going to leave from Lansing, Michigan. I was doing an intercollegiate rodeo down there for Jim Zinser. And Mary and the kids went down there, and they was going to come back home, and I was going to go to Brownsville, Texas to clear the border to go to Mexico again by myself. Now, you got to understand, we didn't have cell phones. We didn't have pagers. We didn't have any telephone system at all. Don Hartwick had a ham radio outfit in the back of his van. And once every 2 weeks, he would have a friend in the States that he could talk with on that ham radio. And then he would get Mary, that guy, and he was in Missouri somewhere. And he would get Mary on the telephone and then patch us in, and that's how I could speak to my wife. And I only did that a couple of times on both them tours. So communications was pretty hard. Okay, so I'm getting ready to leave Lansing, head for Brownsville, Texas. And I told you I was pretty puffy. I was pretty excited about myself. And something come to my head that told you just seen your family for the last time. Now, it's hard for me to tell this story because it hit me so hard. I started bawling. In my own motorhome going down the road, I'm bawling. What did I just do? I sent my family off without me. And here I am going, and I'm so stubborn to not breach my contract and just go back home. I had this solid warning. And I cried all the way to Brownsville, Texas. I'm telling you, Well, when we got to Brownsville, Texas, the only thing I could think of is I'm going to get hurt in Mexico. Mary's not going to know where I'm at. She ain't going to know how to get a hold of me. How's she going to get our motorhome back? How's she going to get me back?